My method of making reeds can be described as lazy, simplified, which is usually true. I like to save as much time as possible for having a life. But one thing that I do that is a bit more work than a lot of people is bevel and rewire my reeds. The reason why I do this is I really think it's worth it. So that's what we're going to do. Deal with it.
Let's make some freaking bassoon reeds.
So instead of spending 50 or 60 bucks on a reed pliers, I just got myself a 4-inch pair of Linesman Pliers. It's pretty hard to find small Linesman's pliers, but it's important. The reason is that the tip is a bit wider than a needle nose, so your pliers won't slip, and they also won't put too much pressure on the reed. It's the same thing. It's small, it's easier to work with, and again, it's not going to be as powerful and overcrush your reed. These have dried for 2 weeks. I'm going to take the wires off. It's pretty simple. Just untwist them. They may break, and that's makes it even faster. Start having some slack, you can just use the wire cutter on the pliers and pull that wire off. Do the same thing to the next wire. You'll find your own special way of removing wires. It really doesn't require any magic as long as you don't break the reed doing it. And our reed was somewhat fragile, but it should open just fine. And now we need to bevel it. I use both a short and a long bevel. The long bevel goes from the very end of the reed to the edge of the bark. Okay? All I'm going to do is I'm going to take each side with a piece of 400 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to, using light pressure, sand this much of the reed just a few times. Light pressure, maybe about 10 seconds, each side. This will help the tube seal together. And that's it. Now the short bevel, which is, I find, makes a very big difference. Believe me, if it didn't matter, I wouldn't waste my time rewiring the reed. I'm going to sand basically from the bottom 1/4 inch of the reed. And I'm going to sand this down a fair amount so that there's some space right here at the very end. And I'm going to, again, I don't normally count this, but I want to get this so that I can kind of see that it's a little bit sanded off. So I'm just going to do this for, I don't know, maybe 15 seconds on each side. I'm going to check my work here in just a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just, I've sanded this down, and I have a bit of space at the very end here, and actually it's not quite enough, so I'm going to do just a tad more. You could, well, some people use maybe a 200 grit sandpaper for this. But then you just have to buy more sandpaper, and it's easier to overdo it. So I just stick with the 400, even if it takes a little longer. Get the other side. All right. So now I've got a little bit more space at the very bottom here, and if I pinch it at the bottom, it'll open, it sort of opens up the reed here, and that's exactly what I want.